I'll ask Dr. Smith a question. Dr. Smith, since you were a lifelong educator and also have a passion for education as I do, maybe you could share with us some of the first things you would do as a commissioner that could impact education in Delray Beach.
I would try to establish a very meaningful relationship with our district school staff, district superintendent, notwithstanding a perception that there may be a slight void in leadership. But I think that you're going to have to do that before any significant progress can be made as far as assisting our local schools. The same way that they said, all politics are local, education is local, but we have to depend upon, the decisions that are being made by the staffers in the district office. So I would say developing an exceptionally strong relationship with the superintendent and those individuals who make decisions on the district school level would probably give us a leg up on, getting, some influence from them, which would benefit our students and our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Katz, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal if you just...
Thank you. I actually have to agree with Dr. Smith, and that's one thing that I think the both of us bring to the table is Dr. Smith has worked with past superintendents. I currently, in my volunteer roles, am working very closely with the current administration in the county, and we have to have a dialogue with them. I encourage this same chamber to have the first debate where we bring for our school board, and it took place after I had to nudge them. Sometimes I have to nudge a little bit, but it worked, and we got a first debate here, and it was awesome. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Mr. Bastian, your question and the candidate who you directed.
Sure. Mrs. Morrison, what are your 3 top specific ideas to increase revenues for the city?
3 top ones? First of all, increase our employment base, bring more employers to our city. As I said, that's my day job. I do that because I represent property owners here in town that have large business parks. So we need to, and by the way, none of the companies that I brought here had any economic incentives from our city. There was one that got one from the state, and we had an expansion that got one from the state, but no money from the city. So we did all this on private enterprise. So we need to increase our tax base. We can't keep concentrating, as Mitch says, my friend Mitch here says, you can't keep concentrating those same 6 blocks. I mean, this is getting old. We got to get out to military, we've got to get out to Congress, we've got to fortify those highways to make them the best they can be, to bring corporate headquarters here, to bring more maker jobs, people that actually make things. Imagine that. Come to Delray Beach, we have a great environment for you to grow. We're not doing that right now, and we could. That's a great way to do it. The second thing is to make sure that we have enough staff to handle what's going on in our city. We are losing money because developers are saying, we just can't get anything done there. It's languish. You don't have enough staff. We got to go through a dozen hearings to get one project done. And we have developers walking away from this city because of that. We need the staff to handle our growth while the sun is shining. This wonderful economy may not last forever. We've got to take advantage of it and run with it while we can and have smart growth and bring companies that are going to enhance our economic base. Third, we've got to look at other sources of revenue. I mean, there's got to be more sources of revenue. And we can do that through LDRs. Let me give you an example. If you drive down the automobile highway of South Federal, south of Linton, you'll see that over the last 3 years, that area has been beautified. And because the LDR stated, and Paul Dorling did this, that before, when they go for redevelopment of their buildings, they had to bring the landscape up to code. So now you see a beautiful palm tree lined highway, and that's being filled in every time a new car dealer comes there. So those are 3 ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. You have 30 seconds for rebuttal. Should you so desire, Mr. Bastian?
Great, thanks. Manufacturing. That was it, right?
Yes.
Bringing manufacturing. No, thanks. I think that was a good response. I appreciate it.
Mr. Smith, your question?
My question directed to Ms. Morrison. Ms. Morrison, how would you deal with declining tax revenues? What part of the budget would you cut? What program or services are essential and should never be cut?
In my opinion, and this is my sole opinion, great cities of the world have their own police department and their own fire department, and they provide their own services. I would not want to outsource our basic services such as police and fire. It is expensive. There's no question about it. Of a $103 million budget, we pay over $59 million just in public safety. Public safety is police, fire, and EMT. So it's very expensive, but we need to find ways to keep those services in our city. They're not variable. We also need to have enough staff to run our city, and that goes back to the sustainability factor that I talked about earlier. If we don't have enough money to run the city, we can't run the city the way that you and I and our neighborhoods need it to be run. So we need to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, you have 30 seconds if you care to rebut anything that Ms. Morrison said.
No rebuttal.
Okay. And Ms. Morrison, your question to?
Sure. Our police department.
Who are
This
you
goes to
directing it
Mr.
to?
Katz. This
Mr.
goes to
Katz.
Mr. Katz, so I turn my head. Thank you. Our police department is a pillar of our community. They risk their lives every time they come to work every day. They worked for 5 years with no increase in basic salaries. They worked for over a year without any contract, still continuing all the services they provide to our city. We worked very hard to negotiate with the police department, and we got them some salary increases that were amenable to both sides. We cut the legacy costs for the city. We were able to reduce the city's pension obligation with those negotiations. And we're trying to keep as many policemen here as we can. So it was a win-win for the city and for the police department. Why were you so negative about the negotiations we were holding with the police?
Thank you. I don't remember being negative about the negotiations, but I tell you a little bit of my thoughts on our police officers. They're my neighbors. I actually have been president of a homeowners association. It was the first workforce housing project ever built in this city. And guess what? Most of my neighbors are police officers, firefighters. I talk to them all the time. Matter of fact, one of them, he just moved out recently. He's had children. He's got another one on the way. He was in our first date because we ended up here. There was a place, a piano bar. He used to be called the Singing Cop. And he actually sang that night. So I'd always joke with him. He was on our first date. But I have a great relationship with our police officers. I actually advocated, and I think I have emails showing it, I've sent commissioners advocating, and I've spoke in favor, if you'd like for me to show you, for them to get raises. Am I pragmatic and am I a realist to realize that we had to look at their pensions, not the pensions themselves, but the funds? What I was negative about was that not the police officers, the commissioners wouldn't take a look at the people who manage those funds. We had one fund, which was our general employees, during a time when just to show you a little directive, the employees fund went like this, the same amount of money. Then the police fund went up, but it only went like this during the same economy because of the people that were managing it. And we had to look at how they were managing it. Are they going on trips to Hawaii, or are they taking care of our citizens' dollars? And trust me, I care for those police officers. Matter of fact, I don't even want the endorsement of the police officers union because I endorse the police officers and the firefighters in the city, and I respect them. I live with them. I talk to them every day, and we have to fight for them, and we need to make sure the commissioner's doing the right thing so when they retire, that money is there, and that we keep the promises we made to them when we hired them. We must do that.
Ms. Morrison?
No rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on now to the second round of questions. Mr. Smith, your question to anyone except Ms. Morris.
Mr. Bastion.
Mr. Bastian.
Mr. Bastion, what do you think are the most important issues facing the city in the next 2 years?
I think one is developing a law. How many do you want? 2, 3? I think it's economic vitality. We've got a downtown. I mean, we all talk about it. It's more than just downtown, but unfortunately, that is our industry: service, retail, and food and beverage. And I think it's important that we really need to diversify that. If we don't diversify that, we could potentially are at risk of just being a trend, and that trend can easily move. So we need to be able to establish that city so that we do work, live, play, learn, and raise our family, like Colin and I do. So I think economic vitality is the most important thing that we need to focus on. And that's why, with my tenure at Cisco, my skill set to be able to do that, bringing that competitive advantage to my customers is a big advantage that I can bring to the city commission. Thank you.
Any response, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I would have a question. You feel as though that problem trumps the problems that are being experienced in our purchasing department?
Well, you had your question, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal to what Mr. Bastian said, not just your question. Okay, very good. All right. Ms. Morrison, your question?
May I ask Dr. Smith a question?
Sure.
Dr. Smith, and he hates when I call him that, but I do it out of respect. You have no idea the respect I have for you with educators, so I'll call you Dr. Smith. Tell me how, with all the massive development coming to West Atlantic, how we're going to protect those wonderful neighborhoods that lie beyond Atlantic Avenue.
I think it's all going to begin with the LDR. And I think that the way that the initial LDR plan was drawn up, I didn't perceive it very positively. I think that the revisions that have been made to it, it's basically eliminated, the bonus density, which would have increased the density and the height of buildings. Is a much better alternative than the original. And I think that, West Atlantic Avenue is thriving, and I think it's going to be a vital part of our economy. And I just feel as though, that great strides have been made in the development of Atlantic Avenue. And I especially want to be a voice, for those who are economically disadvantaged, those who are without a voice, and those who are disenfranchised. And the vast majority of whom are African Americans. But I think the LDR plan, making absolutely certain that it's thorough, and of course, it's consistent. I think that that's what we're talking about, because then, of course, you would be assured of being objective, fair, and consistent throughout the city.
Ms. Morrison, any response?
What do you think the CRA could do to help protect
Well,
that neighborhood?
Not another
I don't
question.
have to, I'm sorry. Don't you think the CRA could help protect that neighborhood moving forward? Is that not part of the plan?
Okay,
Well,
thank you very much. It's another question.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
All right, moving on. Mr. Katz, your question. To anyone except Dr. Smith.
Got it. I'm going to go with Christina.
Sure.
One thing I made a pledge not to take money from special interests, in particular developers, because there's so many projects that are going to come before one of us. Christine, as we all know, one of the biggest development projects that one of us will see in the next 3 years is going to be the Hudson Holdings Sunday Lane project. How will you be able to ensure that you have the residents' best interests in your decision making, since you recently held a fundraiser at the Sunday House hosted by the principals of Hudson Holdings?
Sure. Well, first of all, if I have to step down from the Diaz for that decision, I will do that. I think the reason that that I think developers, first of all, developers give to all campaigns. That's just something they do. You ask them for money, they give money. They want to protect their future here in the city. So I'm not the only one that ever accepted money from developers. So let's put that out there. Second of all, I firmly believe in the Sunday House project. There was some controversy early on that some of the historic buildings had to be taken to accommodate that site plan. However, those historic buildings, because of our city, were let to rot. I mean, if you drive down First Avenue and you drive down South Swinton, those buildings are rotting. They've been sitting there for years, no attention. And because of our code, we don't have enough code people to enforce our own regulations. So the fact that some of those are going to be moved or torn down to make way for a beautiful expansion of the Sunday House wedding operation, I think was a win-win for this city. The plan that they have for the corner of Atlantic and Swinton will be nothing short of spectacular. And if I have to step down when they bring it forward, I will step down, you betcha. I've abided by a code of ethics for 20 years. I'm not changing now.
Well,
Mr. Katz, 30 seconds.
Well, with one of the biggest decisions coming, I would hope that we're going to have 5 commissioners up to make that decision. So that's why I'm not asking for that money from those developers, because I want to have 5 commissioners up there. So if you obviously vote, she's our commissioner, we're only going to have 4 making, and that's going to be a huge decision. Because when you talk about tearing down those homes, that's the history. My children here, I want them to be able to bring them downtown here and show them the history of the city. That's one of the reasons I moved here. And we can't just bring in bulldozers and knock down that history. So we have to work together to do it right.
Thank you. Mr. Bastian, your question to anyone except Ms. Morris.
Or Mr. Smith.
No, you can ask Mr. Smith.
Actually, I have one for Mr. Katz. The economy to me is one of my main pillars of my campaign. I think it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important to Delray Beach. It's incredibly important for our kids to be able to come back and have jobs. And I appreciate the fact that you've been an HOA president. I was as well at my last OHA. I think I guess you've done some good things. There's also been issues, I think, with all the window issues at the HOA, which you haven't been able to resolve in the past 10 years. So I appreciate that you haven't been able to raise assessments, but you may want to look at that, actually. And being an educator, I really want to know, with the economy being my main platform, what are your qualifications? Help us understand your qualifications to be able to bring and continue the growth of the economic vitality for Delray Beach.
Absolutely. First, you asked me about Bexley Park and our windows, because I've been on the news, because I've actually been fighting that fight for a long time, and we actually have made a lot of progress on that. First thing is, the judge told us that as an association, as the president of the association and our board, by law, we cannot do anything with those windows. We cannot do anything inside the homes, the outside the buildings. As an association, we're only allowed to paint them. So because of that, our lawsuit changed to a different firm. Now we're in a class action lawsuit against the builder. And I don't know if you were here, I guess not. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I spoke at a commission meeting, and I asked our mayor to write a letter to the builder, try to bring them to the table. So I've addressed that, and I think most of you went and actually walked our community, talked to our residents. They're happy with the progress that I've made there. So I have looked into it. As far as being able to work with businesses, bring the economy here, I work for one of the largest universities in the country. I partnered with some of the largest school districts in the country. I've just recently landed a partnership with the Florida college system, where every single employee of this college can help them with their tuition when they're pursuing an advanced degree. I worked with corporations in my previous life and other careers, but I've always been somebody that brings people together and partners. Matter of fact, I actually built into the description of we have about 250 people that kind of do what I do for the company. And I'm the only one that does those types of partnerships, because I can collaborate so well with especially state institutions, different bodies of government, as well as large Fortune 500 companies. I just started a dialogue with one of the largest companies in Boca to partner with our business. So I absolutely feel that I can do that, and I can continue to do some of the great things that we've done here in our town.
Mr. Bastian, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Sure, thank you. As far as qualifications, I think it's nice to build partnerships. However, I think building partnerships, it's more than that, to be able to bring economic vitality and jobs and things like that to Delray Beach. And I think, as we look at being able to bring those companies, being able to have those executive relationships, being able to have those conversations and encourage them to come to Delray Beach, because we have an amazing city, as we all know. And that's why we're here, because we love this city.